There's farmers and there's operators. And the idea of decoupling the consensus and the execution is what I touched on before, is to reduce the load on farmers. Farmers only store the blockchain history, which is very lightweight. It can be done on commodity hardware. And then we have specialized executor nodes, which are a little more powerful, like a gaming computer or something like that. And they're performing the computationally intensive tasks. They're maintaining the state transitions of the blockchain. And this enables great scalability because now the workload is distributed.
Hey everyone, I'm Jeremy. I'll be the host for this podcast. Super happy to have Todd over here from Autonomous Network. He's currently a CEO and has been working there for a while, kind of shaping the company and bringing it to the future. So Todd, can you just give us a kind of a quick intro of who you are, how you ended up at Autonomous, and at the cross section of AI and crypto?
Sure. So my career started on Wall Street, where I worked for over 20 years in the TradFi space for investment advisor, broker-dealer companies. I was primarily in technology to start with, and then that moved into equity trading and managing operations. And in 2017, I switched over to the crypto space. Loved the remote work, not having to commute into Manhattan anymore, which was a great change of pace. And I discovered the Subspace protocol in some of my interactions on a Polkadot forum, actually. And I met Jeremiah Wagstaff and Nazar Makrinsky, who are the founders of the project. And I began working on a consultancy basis for them in 2021. And I started as running the finance. I moved over and started to take over operations as the company grew. It was the three of us, and then some other people joined. And now we're a company of 35 people, globally distributed, and we're building the Autonomous Network.
So I know Autonomous Network kind of was built off the Subspace protocol. Also, congratulations on mainnet launch a couple of days ago. Awesome to see. So can you kind of walk me through the life cycle from Subspace to now Autonomous?
Sure. So the Subspace protocol was initially founded with the idea of bringing decentralized storage onto the Substrate framework. Substrate, of course, was conceived by Gavin Wood, who built Polkadot. And the initial concept was that the Subspace network was to be a parachain on Polkadot. But as we really dove into the technology and got deeper and deeper into what we were building, we realized that this is a sovereign layer one. It doesn't need to run as a parachain. It can exist independent of it, and it can be better. So we shifted to that and started building a layer one blockchain. We had gone through several iterations of the development process, figuring out what the architecture was going to look like, knowing that storage was still going to be one of our core benefits, as well as compute. We switched over into the AI space kind of right before it took off and ChatGPT came out and it became the thing. But we were kind of already there. So figuring out how we can build a network that will enable humans and AI to be autonomous, a human-centric approach whereby using decentralized compute and storage and kind of democratizing access to the network, we think that we can really build something special that's going to revolutionize the space.
So you guys on the website reference AI 3.0. I'm assuming it's kind of taking a page out of Web 3.0 and kind of creating a similarity there. Can you walk me through the evolution of AI 1 and AI 2.0 and kind of how we got to 3.0?
Yeah, so we termed AI 3.0 as kind of like what our vision is and what we're building. AI 1.0 was really just the beginning of machine learning. We had computers that could do pattern recognition, it could do some predictive analytics, and some really basic kind of tasks. Then we moved into where we are now, which is generative AI. You have ChatGPT, content creation, human-like interactions, and so forth. Where we see this going, and we're calling AI 3.0, is into the phase where AI becomes human-centric. AI ownership, where individuals are empowered through data ownership, things like federated learning and open collaboration. This would be something like AI agents that run on a decentralized infrastructure, where you're enabling like personalized real-time applications to interact together on the spot. And then we have a product suite as well that fits into the AI 3.0 stack for things like ID, storage, and of course, decoupled execution with our domains.
Awesome. Yeah. So we'll hit on a lot of that further on. But the next question I kind of have is, what do you think makes you and the team uniquely qualified to kind of tackle this problem and bring us into AI 3.0?
So, as I mentioned in the beginning, we are a global team of really pioneers in blockchain. We have a lot of people that have worked on some big projects. We have some people that came from Filecoin, some people that worked originally on Zcash, a lot of early Bitcoin miners, people that have been in the blockchain space for basically their whole careers. We combine that with a phenomenal research team of PhDs. In the early stage, we did a lot of work with Stanford, and Dr. David Say over there was one of our advisors for a while. And we've since moved over to really working on scalability. We're working with some PhDs at the University of British Columbia. Dr. Chen is on our staff, and they are working on really figuring out the architecture of how this is going to look like as we move to scale. We have several people on the team that come from enterprise software backgrounds, places like Amazon. And then, of course, as I mentioned, someone like myself who is coming from the TradFi space and really looking to kind of replicate a lot of the synergies that I see already kind of playing out. A lot of the problems it seems like blockchain is facing now was faced by TradFi 20 years ago. And since then, things have evolved and it's gotten to a place where it's very automated. Markets are very efficient, and blockchain hasn't really gotten to that point yet. So I think by also, having people with diverse business backgrounds on the team, that really kind of uniquely suits us to propel this forward.
Let's connect this back kind of for the audience here. So you guys just dropped the kind of new white paper, and it kind of outlines a lot of the unique mechanisms that make Autonomous kind of special and have the ability to achieve that scalability. So kind of starting off with the new consensus mechanism, proof of archival storage, can you kind of walk me through what that is and how it functions?
Sure. So proofs of archival storage is what was the original vision for our consensus, and we've stayed with it. The way this functions is there are no barriers to entry. You don't need CPU power like you would in Bitcoin. You don't need stake. You don't need 32 tokens in order to run your own node. With commodity hardware, and early on, we even did this on a Raspberry Pi, which is a very minimalist device, where proofs of archival storage, the users will pledge disk space, idle hard drive space to the network, and they can begin farming on community hardware. So a user decides, I have 100 gig of disk space that I'm not using. In 15 minutes, they can plot that with an average GPU. And the data that we're plotting onto their hard drive is the encoded blockchain data itself. So the blockchain is thereby erasure coded across thousands of nodes where each node may hold a portion of the chain. It may hold multiple replicas of the chain depending on how much space they pledged. So when a challenge is posed to the network, instead of all the CPUs and GPUs trying to figure out what the correct solution is, users in a very low energy manner scan their hard drive plots to see if they have the correct solution. And again, that plot is the blockchain data itself. So it's probabilistic. The more that you plot, the better chances you have of winning a block reward. So, some people will contribute 500 terabytes. They're going to win more rewards than someone who only contributes 100 gigabytes. But the idea is that it can be done on commodity hardware and that anyone can participate. So, for instance, in our test nets, we had over 35,000 nodes, people that have downloaded our software, and you just let it run in the background and you're participating in consensus and you're earning token rewards. So very unique.
Yeah, I actually have my Spake Acres Farmers node running on my PC. It's
Excellent.
currently mining some rewards over there, which is awesome.
Yep, great.
So speaking of, we kind of just mentioned the word farmers. Can you walk me through what a farmer is and the farmer's dilemma, which was kind of introduced and solved through the Subspace protocol white paper?
Sure. So that was in the very first iteration of the original white paper. And a farmer is someone who does exactly what I just explained. They plot space on their hard drive and they contribute it to the consensus mechanism on the network. The farmer's dilemma refers to a conflict of incentives for farmers. A farmer has to decide how to use, let's say, limited storage capacity on their hard drive. Do they allocate the storage to preserve the state of the blockchain and the history, which is what's good for the network? Or do they use it for consensus and try to maximize the rewards? And the rational farmer is always going to choose the latter, option two. because storing the history doesn't really give them any reward. So this is a risk. We have fewer participants maintaining the history of the blockchain, and it makes the network weaker. So with proofs of archival storage, farmers are rewarded for storing these verifiable replicas of the blockchain's history, ensuring it remains secure. And of course, by decoupling consensus and execution, which we do with our operator nodes, the farmers can focus on storing the blockchain history while the state is managed by the executors. So the actual blockchain history is what's being stored on their plot and also being used to generate rewards. So it kind of solves both problems and thereby solves what we call the farmer's dilemma.
Okay, so the operator kind of node function, could you dive into, are there any other node functions, or is it just farmers and operators?
There's farmers and there's operators. And the idea of decoupling the consensus and the execution is what I touched on before, is to reduce the load on farmers. Farmers only store the blockchain history, which is very lightweight. It can be done on commodity hardware. And then we have specialized executor nodes, which are a little more powerful, like a gaming computer or something like that. And they're performing the computationally intensive tasks. They're maintaining the state transitions of the blockchain. And this enables great scalability because now the workload is distributed. So these executors are being paid transaction fees, and multiple executors can execute transactions in parallel to allow for larger volumes. And this creates an environment where the farmers can just focus on storage. That's their only job. And they can do it with a lower end computer, while the operators are the ones doing the more computationally intensive tasks.
Nice. So you're almost kind of pulling together people's compute in a way to be able to kind of run these specific domains. So can you kind of go through what is an example of a domain and how domains kind of function as a dApp layer within the autonomous network?
So one example of a domain would be an EVM domain, most basic. And we're going to stand that up when we launch our domains architecture in Q1 of next year. So a compute domain is something that a developer will be able to stand up, and it's a unique execution environment that's tailored to their specific needs. It can have its own operators. It could even have its own token. So think of domains, we think of them as these kind of enshrined rollups that exist on the consensus chain. So the consensus chain are the farmers running at the base level. That's the storage. And then the domains are these executor environments where you can run your own kind of customized application. So in an EVM, for instance, and developers will be able to take smart contracts that already exist, deploy them in the EVM, and run in that execution environment. A separate domain could be something like a Solana virtual machine. Another one could be tailored for just one specific function. In our suite, for instance, we have auto ID, which is what we're going to use for AI agents to be able to prove their identities to one another. That will be an auto ID domain. So they're almost kind of like layer twos, but they're native to our protocol and they're built in at the base layer. So it's kind of an all-in-one package.
Yeah, so hopefully people like open developers can kind of build their own domains out and you can kind of see where the product market fit for the autonomous network grows from there. So are there kind of specific markers you're looking in the PMF world now that mainnet's launched phase one?
So, there are several. One of which I just mentioned is ID, because as we start to move into this era of AI agents, which is what we originally set out to work to address, we found that identity is going to be one of the major hurdles. This is something that a lot of people are working on. So I wouldn't say it is a core value. I wouldn't say that it's the only thing that we're doing. It's kind of foundational, it's built in. So there will be auto ID so that the agents and people are able to cryptographically prove their identities to one another. So identity is one area that's a big fit. And of course, we're thinking storage is a great place for us to find product market fit because we have so much of it. The blockchain, because it's built on hard drives, can just bloat massively. We launched our mainnet just 2 weeks ago, and we hit over 200, and haven't looked recently, but we're well over 200 petabytes of data that's already been contributed. So Yeah, so storage is a great one. The compute is going to be big once we launch that in January. We'll be able to have these unique execution domains for, tailored to specific applications. There's a lot of areas. And because this technology and the agent and the AI space is still kind of nascent, I think it's going to take a while for everybody to kind of find their niche, but we know what our strengths are. And those are the markets that we're going after in particular.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Could we dive a little bit deeper into the storage aspect? So you mentioned mainnet just launched over 200 petabytes of data kind of already available. How does that compare to kind of other alternatives already out there?
Yeah. So the big difference with ours is that, and it's, by the way, it's 250 petabytes. The big difference with ours that we offer that really no one else does is that it's verifiable and it's permanent. There are other networks out there that also offer things like storage, maybe like an Arweave or Filecoin, but they're not really incentive compatible and their storage is not verifiable. Ours is verifiably permanent. Once you commit something to the autonomous network, it's there forever. It's on the blockchain. It's replicated across thousands and eventually, hopefully, millions of hard drives worldwide, and it can never be removed. So that replication factor is what's going to ensure that it is always going to be there. It's part of the permanent blockchain. And we've accomplished that by making the permanent storage part of the consensus mechanism. So that enables it to be verifiable and you know that it's always going to be there. So data permanence is a huge one. Of course, scalability because of the number of nodes involved. We're shooting to have the largest network by number of pure nodes, having 35,000 just on our incentivized testnet. And we're certainly looking to have, tens of thousands in the coming months in order to, continue to grow our foundation.
I think looking kind of look at the industry at whole, like what Grass recently did with their big like TGE, but the primary unlock to that was exactly what you just said, kind of pledging unused space on your computer to the network. And I think they were a prime example of how that can actually work in the industry. Where do you kind of envision autonomous in 2 years? Like what has to go right for the autonomous vision to really come into reality?
Yeah. So, a lot of things have to go right, I think, in order for the entire industry to really start to see acceptance here. First of all, I think there has to be a cultural shift almost in society, not just technical, but it's got to be kind of moral, where the users and communities get into democratization and co-governance of data and of technology like AI agents, using decentralized protocols with ethical standards and inclusivity, economic models that adequately reward participation to incentivize people to be involved, as we said. And again, the democratization aspect is big. I think that we are going to get to a point where people realize that having a few large companies monopolize all of the data is not something that's going to be really tolerable in the future. There are just too many things that go wrong. How many offers have you gotten from companies because you're getting a free credit monitoring software subscription because your data was stolen, or you put it on a system that is maybe permissioned or isn't trustless and somebody can take away access to your data. We all store our data on the likes of the big 5 companies or big 4 companies that are out there on their public drives and in their clouds, but we're accessing our own data at the permission of these companies. So we're hoping that there will be a shift, a societal shift in general, where things like human-centric data ownership, transparency, and privacy become bigger issues. And I think they will, to the point where people say, we can't tolerate these monopolistic structures anymore. We need something that's more democratized.
What is kind of the internal feelings at Autonomous? Because you guys are based in the U.S., you're a U.S. company, or like most of the team at least. So how do you guys feeling internally about just the general state of the markets and where you think we're going short term?
I'd say ecstatic. We were talking about this yesterday. The team is really excited just to see about all the changes that are happening in the US. We found out yesterday that we're getting a change in the SEC, which we knew, but nobody knew how smooth that was going to be. Turns out it's going to be pretty smooth. There's rumors about the appointment of a crypto czar. Bitcoin, I don't really feel like needs any regulation. It's already on its way. It has an ETF. It's already been essentially declared a commodity, falls under the control of the CFTC. So Bitcoin really doesn't need a lot of help. But it's the altcoins, I think, where we need to see more regulation. And that's what we've been asking for. And our team in particular is very excited to see this shift, as I think all teams are. I don't think it's going to be a frenzy where you can just go out and start doing ICOs for, meme coins and things like that. But I do anticipate it's going to happen in a controlled manner and probably in stages. I don't think that we're going to see all of a sudden this big flurry of great regulation that comes out in the first 100 days, although that is when the 100-day plan will kick in. There will be a crypto advisory board for the administration, and several other things that are just going to help get the ball rolling. But it's going to take time. It's going to take time. We have a lot of work to do, but the team is very excited.
I feel like with this new administration, the shackles have been lifted off the crypto market, but the AI market, because they haven't really seen the regulation by enforcement stuff at all. AI didn't really get big till this past year. So do you kind of envision that AI is going to flourish even more because now we're in a very favorable kind of regulation environment? Or do you think crypto and AI will kind of symbiotically rise together?
It's a really good question. I think for years that crypto has in large part been a solution in search of a problem. Obviously it's very conducive to payments. Bitcoin, we found out, can be a store of value just by holding it. So that's a use case. Ethereum, people hate the term programmable money, but a place where you can build and deploy smart contracts. Now I think with blockchain in general, that there are just a tremendous number of synergies with AI. And I do think that they will continue to kind of evolve together, particularly in something like the agent space. So, one agent needs to talk to another and they need to verify each other's identities. Are you going to run all your agents on a single provider or platform? And you are therefore siloed into that environment and can only communicate with other agents that are in there? Or are we going to have, and we will, all this cross-platform connectivity? How are they going to work together? How are they going to identify one another? The training data that's going into these AI models, how is the public going to know that it's not biased, that they can trust it, and they can see? That type of stuff can be put on the blockchain, in particular Autonomys, which is very conducive to storing massive amounts of data. So it puts things in the public realm. So transparency is going to be very important. Identity is going to be very important. Privacy is going to be very important. So I think there are a lot of synergies between the two. The other part of that you asked about was regulation. And I think it's become pretty clear, especially in California, when the governor recently, opted not to sign the bill, which would have really kind of reeled in a lot of the innovation that's going on in AI. And the industry, of course, wants to kind of grow unfettered and just do its own thing. I don't know that that's the solution. There has to be some guardrails. There has to be some guidelines. I don't know if it would be able to happen by enforcement, because even though, they're kind of off and innovating and moving at Mach speed, I don't know that there's any laws being broken aside from complaints about copyright violations and potential trademarks and things like that. But the technology itself doesn't seem to be really at risk of getting too out of control as long as there is some regulation. And I don't think that the space is against some regulation. They just want it to be thoughtful. Things like having kill switches available to be able to shut things down. I think that the industry came out and made a big statement, particularly in California, saying that they don't want to be tightly regulated by anyone.
Interesting. So do you think that kind of, I guess, would contribute to the flow of Silicon Valley becoming alive again? So obviously COVID kind of hampered that whole area. But I've been hearing rumors. I'm based on the East Coast. But I've heard that the West Coast is kind of coming back. What do you think about that?
I hope so. California, has really had a rough go of it recently. That was evidenced, I think, in the last elections too. There has been some huge changes in some of the seats of Congress in California. A lot of local elections and turnovers. I think that the plan for, especially in like the San Francisco and the Bay Area, there's going to be a big revitalization effort, which the area really needs. And hopefully that will boost, Palo Alto and the whole Silicon Valley area to come back to prominence again. But it's definitely going to take some time. That's something, a redevelopment of that magnitude is something that's probably going to take years. But at least now, after the election, it feels like the people have said, we've had enough of the way things are. Can only get better from here. We need new leadership.
So if I'm a developer kind of looking to join the Autonomous Network, what advice would you give me? How can I contribute? If I'm a builder, what should I be looking to build once kind of phase 2 and phase 3 of the Autonomous Network drops later in 2025?
First of all, we are a fully open source project. So if you're a developer and you want to participate, it's open source. Go on GitHub, contribute. We're always open to looking at people who want to build things that are, useful on our platform. The community has built a lot of really cool dashboards to be able to monitor things that are going on in our ecosystem. You had mentioned before Space Acres, which is our farming app. It runs on Windows, it runs on Mac, and you just download and install, and now you're running a farmer, you're participating in consensus, you're earning tokens, and maybe someone even wants to fork Space Acres and write their own client to be able to farm. So that would be great. People will be able to build dApps. Our DevNet EVM is going to be launching sometime probably in the next few months, and people will be able to go out and deploy there. We'll have hackathons and grants that will be coming out once we launch phase 2. If someone is a farmer, and we have a very vibrant, organic farming community, and shout out to them. We've got some people that really love this. You can meet up with people in our Discord, in our Telegram. There is a lot of places where you can get into these farming communities, and our Discord is one of them. It is a culture into its own. It's a great group of people who have been instrumental to us building our ecosystem. So shout out to them. And developers, absolutely, we will be courting in the very near future as we start to launch this phase 2. So yeah.
Awesome. So what are the best ways to kind of get in contact with you or the company in general?
So I mentioned the Discord already. That is where most of the chatter takes place, as with most. We do some community calls, so you can keep an eye on the schedule there. We do announcements through our website. You can follow us on X, on AutonomousNet. I am Todd on Twitter, if you'd like to follow me. So we're on Telegram as well. But the best places would be the website. We're open to emails. There's contact information on the webpage, and we would love to hear from anyone who would like to be involved or get more information.
Awesome, Todd. Thank you so much for hopping on today. This is a great conversation.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy.